All right, we're here talking about House of the Dragon, episode 3, second of his name.
Mhm.
Yeah, that had me thrown off because there's an episode of Game of Thrones called First of His Name, I believe. That's a pretty famous episode.
Yeah.
So this episode covers it jumps ahead 2 years, so we do the biggest time jump so far.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're like 9 years into the reign of
I guess
the
it'd be longer
king.
than 2 years though because the baby's two.
Yeah, so
So
like 3.
so yeah, we jump ahead like 3 years since the last episode. This episode starts with
Well, the opening scene is the crab guy again.
yeah, I wonder if that scene takes place during this timeline or if that scene takes place before
I
the
thought it was kind of a precursor with the war.
the prologue. Yeah, it seems like cuz it's hard to tell cuz it's the only
Yeah.
time Damon talks in the episode too is in that scene where he's like, "Come out. Get out here."
Yeah.
So what we found out is if you know at the end of episode 2, it seemed like there was about to be a fight between Daemon and Mr. Krabs. And then episode 3, we hear that the war's been going on for like 2.5 years. There
Mhm.
isn't just a fight scene. I guess they end up in a whole war. I have a lot of questions about this.
Yeah, they haven't fleshed out Mr. Krabs.
Well, beyond that, how did this war last 3 years? I can't wrap my head around it because they don't explain any of it. How would they have two dragons? Damon's side, right? Okay, so theoretically, the dragon should just be able to go burn people, leave, come back. How would the crab guy keep getting I mean, they show them run off in caves.
That's basically their whole explanation is that they're the dwarves from Lord of the Rings and they just hide.
Yeah, they just hide from the dragon, and then I just don't get it. It's like, what's the battle? Wouldn't it be every time that they go out, they have a dragon to attack them? How would they ever get anything done? I just don't know. Maybe someone can answer this for me, but in my head, it doesn't make any sense that they would have a war for years with two dragons.
Well, because they show in the I hate to jump ahead, but, like, they show the scene where, yeah, just lure them out and burn them.
Yeah, why wasn't that the plan for 3 years? Why did it take one inspiration? Why did Damon need one thing to go? I think I got this figured out now. Um, but that's really not the bulk of the episode. The bulk of the episode is it's the 2 year of Aegon Targaryen, and they're going on a hunt. And his wife, the queen now, who was Rhaegar's best friend, she's now pregnant with the second child. And the whole thing's built around going on the hunt and the stag with the
And that
heart.
the hunt really determines if
Yes.
he's an heir or not,
Yes.
or that I don't know because they talk about, like, the dragon riders, so is he trying to see, like, is the white stag, is that a sign of, like,
Right.
they have the dragon's blood, whatever?
So that's the bulk of the episode, I would say, is them going on this journey, and it's about the tension between him and Rihanna because now the tension is King Viserys is like
Rhaenyra.
Rhaenyra, sorry, Rihanna. Uh, but the tension is with her is that she hasn't gotten married, and she's of age
Yes.
now. So with the 3 year time jump, she's older, and it's established by that's kind of the big debate and argument between the two of them throughout the thing is
Well, and her being usurped, will she be replaced as
yes,
the heir,
yes,
you know?
because now we have an heir. Because the first episode is about succession, and then he makes his choice. The second episode is kind of toying around with like the ramifications of that decision.
Damien's aspect of I mean,
Yes,
it really leads into the war just because he won't make Damien the heir.
Damon.
Damon.
We're getting all the names wrong. I don't know half the people's
We
names
watch
either.
this show and we just hear different names as we watch it.
I mean, I wish his name was Damien. That would be hilarious. And then this episode, now the conflict is will Aegon, because he's the firstborn son, now be the king?
Mhm.
And a lot of people want this, particularly Hightower, who is Otto Hightower, who is definitely the Tywin
Oh,
of the show.
yeah.
This guy doesn't say something without it being to his advantage in some level.
It's all Well, he gets called out on it. It's all
Yeah.
politics. The king freaks out on him. He's like, "I'm tired of this politicking."
So we haven't talked much about the episode really. We watched it initially and then we kind of did a skimming over it before we talked about it again. I I don't even want to say I almost hate this
Mm.
on some level because it's almost like this uh, fear thing. It's trepidation because I thought this episode honestly like this is why I hate it. I thought this was great. Like this was what
Yeah, it's
I
enjoyable.
this is what I wanted the show to be in a lot of ways. I think this is by far the best episode of the 3. I think the show's getting better as it goes, and a lot of complaints I had about the first 2 episodes with the pacing, this episode does not have. It
And
does slow down, it does spend time on
yes.
conversation. All the conversations are interesting and engage and they have double meanings to them. There's things to read into in what people are saying,
Yeah.
which you don't get a lot. I mean, like I said, I think it might be a standards thing that I might just be happy with something being good. I mean, it's very possible
Just watchable.
because this isn't like I still don't think this has been great, but honestly, this episode, in particular, King Viserys and the actors playing him, which I only knew this guy from like Edgar Wright movies. He's in like Hot Fuzz and stuff. He just keeps getting better. Like because
He's so endearing.
he's doing more in this episode too. There's different because we've never seen him be aggressive
Yeah.
and we've never seen him play the politics a bit. It's such a multifaceted performance that I, like, love this character. He feels like a real he's reasonable.
When he's a dad,
Well,
he's a father. That's what's crazy. All these
yes.
I just don't buy that throughout history that all men and they always portray it that way,
Right,
that all men treat their daughters like property, and I know there was that mentality, but I just don't buy, especially in your high class, which obviously they're supposed to be the highest level. Yeah, why wouldn't you want to also you
right.
have the power to let your daughter be happy in that world. I just don't buy there's not a parent that wouldn't. I love that they're actually portraying him as a good father, a good person.
Yeah, no,
He's
he's
the Ned or yeah, the Ned Stark.
well, even I mean, I just it's crazy to say because I would just if you would have asked me going in who I thought would be, like, the character that stood out, I would have never thought, like, the king character.
You're waiting for him to be bad, and he's just not.
Or for him to become second fiddle to what's going on because you think
Yeah,
Damon is, in the first episode, you're like, "This guy's the
right.
guy." But man, the actor playing Viserys and his performance, he's a really complex person. He's not narrow-minded. He does change.
Well, and the
Um,
daughter gets better
I
too.
agree. I think their relationship gets better. In particular, this episode.
I was very worried about her character.
Me too.
I thought it was gonna be so cringe and
Y-
just a bad representation of like a girl, a woman. But they're doing so well with portraying her as like the teenager and then that like 18, 19 age where you're like, no, you don't get to make decisions for her. That's exactly where she's at right now, and I love it.
Well, I mean, I just can't think. I think pretty much every decision they made during this middle stretch of this episode when they're actually on the hunt was perfect. Like, I really
Hmm.
have no issues.
The hunt's amazing.
I have no complaint on like her and him having the conversation in the carriage about getting
She's
married.
acting like a bratty teenager. It's
Nobody's
hilarious.
here for me.
And then her sister's there awkward. In
Well, not her
or not sister,
sister,
her
her
best
friend.
friend is there as the most awkward. Well, with that family, you never know. It could be her sister married to her father. They brought up her marrying her brother.
Yeah, baby.
It would put an end to all of the
I love
offers.
everyone suggesting things to the king, and then everyone like speaks too far, and then Otto catches on. He's like, "We won't talk about it anymore." He gets the fuck out of
No,
there.
he calls them out because he's the worst one. He flat out addresses like, "Okay, stop with your pushing. I
Yeah,
married your daughter, like,
yeah. I'm fucking your daughter. Is that not enough?
she had my baby, she's pregnant
Well,
again."
even that relationship with the friend that she's the queen and she has to be this almost mother figure now, and now she's going to that. That's a
Yes.
complex
When she
relationship.
cares so much about her just as a on a personal level. But remember in the first episode, they had it where, like, I don't know, it almost seemed a little bit like they were
I mean, I
lesbians.
still think the daughter's a lesbian.
Oh,
I don't
without
think
a
she
doubt.
likes me. She might cutely look at the night guy, but
Oh, the Dornish.
yeah, but I still
Yes.
think she's all signs to me point that that or asexual. I don't know. She may just not be a very sexual person, but she doesn't seem to have a lot of sexuality. What's another thing too?
She's
They
a dragon, don't they lay eggs?
they introduced Jason Lannister in this, a Lannister, and he's trying to marry her, and
Yeah. Chad.
that conversation. Well, man, this episode it has so many good scenes, like Viserys getting drunk and everyone coming up to him and giving the advice, and then being like, "You're going to, obviously Aegon's going to become the heir," and he's the only one who's like, "Why do you all think that? I'm not changing my mind," even though everyone's pushing him
Mhm.
in that direction. But he's telling his daughter, like, "Listen, I can't do this with you if you're not willing to get married. You're fucking this up, and you're putting me in a situation now of compromise where people are
Well,
questioning me." And then there's a battle going on in the background that
and
I might
he's
have to be part of.
sick, his hand, whatever's going on with his
Yeah, it's
hand.
infection
Well,
through his
that has
body.
to be advanced because they have I think they hint at it with when he's killing the stag and he can't do it well, and then, he just wears the glove all the time, and he makes weird motions, like, the actor makes motions with his hand to kind of portray
I
maybe
think the drinking too is him trying to deal
dealing
with.
with illness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, man, they even have a scene. I mean, it shocked me when we watched it on Sunday. They have a scene where she rides off Rebellious, and I was like, "Oh, here we fucking go."
Yeah.
And then the night guy chases her down, and then they have a conversation that's really wonderful, where
Yeah,
she's like,
he builds her back up.
well, he says some stuff that, well, what I loved about this episode, which I always like, is logic, is characters say something to someone and someone hears what the person says and responds accordingly, not based on emotion. So he says to her, like, "Hey, listen, you think what you are is meaningless, but you gave my life the highest honor." And she's like, "Oh, that's an interesting point." And they do something again with that later
Yeah.
with Viserys and her, which we'll get to, which is a similar thing. And I'm like, "Oh my god, this is like all the stuff that I criticize about writing in shows and movies.
No, they've done well.
This doesn't have that issue right now. At least right now, it
This
has.
episode in particular, what we're
Yes,
discussing, it was good.
that's why it's scary. That's why I hate it. That's why
I
I'm
know
scared.
you don't want that peak to be early and then just
Well, because what if we get like five bad? Because they could afford a weak episode now. This episode was good enough. There could be a filler
well, they couldn't
episode.
afford good enough CGI for those deer.
Yeah, the CGI. Well, because she rides off with the guy, and then they're hanging out, and then they get attacked by a boar, which is what killed Robert Baratheon. And there's clearly like there's some obvious subtext going on here with the killing of the
Mhm.
boar, and then the series and the
Yeah,
stag.
because she doesn't just kill that boar.
No, she brutally stabs it to death.
Yeah.
Well, also Viserys not being able to kill the stag, that's metaphoric. But I'm okay with all that. I don't care if it's obvious. Like I don't know who directed this
I
episode.
think with how mainstream all of this has got I don't know if House of the Dragon is as mainstream, but with
It's
the
doing very well.
yeah. I kind of figured with the whole Game of Thrones thing
Yeah,
catching up. Yeah, you kind of need to think make things a little more obvious for a more like normie crowd.
but the thing is like I don't know who directed this episode. I saw the name, but I've never heard of the director. This was just a really wonderfully shot and put together. It was very elegant. This is what I'd say the biggest compliment is that I loved about this episode, and what I think's lacking in a lot of fantasy stuff is just how small scale and world building it was. Is like
Mhm.
we went on the hunt with them. We get to see them in the tents. We get to see the pro. I mean, like
We
the
get a new character.
yeah.
Part of the world building because they mention about him I think very briefly they like immediately skip over him,
Hmm.
but I'm rooting for this kid. I know it's not a good boat to get on. He's probably doomed, but well, he's certainly doomed with being a dragon rider,
But
but
that's a different storyline. I'm talking about them on the hunt in the camp. You're talking about Damon's storyline.
well, it's just story building in general.
Yeah, that's true. No, I'm just saying, like,
No, they did a lot of discussion and a lot of
well, what we miss about like what Game of Thrones stopped being. Like, I miss Robert going on the hunt, or them
mhm.
just setting up a little table for him and Ned to have a conversation. That's what fantasy is. When you
Well,
read fantasy literature
they
or you
have
get
to be
into it,
living. They're living lives. That's not all just the
well, like when
war
people
and
complain about some of the Harry Potter films being slow, I'm like, well, yeah, but you that stuff's good that we just hang out.
we were all so immersed in Hogwarts that major places built replicas of Hogwarts. That's
Yeah,
it captured a generation because we felt like part of it. That's what you want. You want to escape into that world.
Well, because it makes it more you can get drawn in, like, me seeing them go through the traditions of this and really trying to make it realistic or being like, "You need the heart of the stag, it's the sign," and all that stuff. But
Yeah,
all
I love the lore of it that it's,
yes.
you know, the hunt from the father determines like the life of the child, how their life will go.
Well, even beyond that, just that it was, like, beautiful shots of them in the woods. There's a shot where it cuts to the dogs, and it's like the sun's hitting them. It's just really nice stuff, like, really good filmmaking. It isn't a bunch of CGI and special effects. You could tell they just
Yeah.
went out and filmed in a real location, and it takes its time. Um, but yeah, just that thing of, like, conversations have, double meanings. People are motivated, things are being referenced that have been brought up and the fact that they're jumping ahead in so much time and yet we're still able in our heads to kind of understand.
Yeah, they're not getting well,
It's not getting convoluted.
I think that's the benefit of not, although we may have criticized it in the first couple episodes, I think if they would have done too much with the characters, with them dropping information and all that, I think it might have been harder to carry forward those time jumps. But yeah, because they just kind of gave you this very basic outline and then jumped ahead. Now we're getting some of those conversations and we're getting like the father daughter dynamic
Yeah.
is amazing. Well, the
uh,
father, the trio there with her
yeah.
friend being the wife
Yeah.
and
All.
outranking her, we get where she pulls rank on
Yeah,
her.
with the little dwarf guy playing Ed Sheeran out there playing.
The fiddler.
Yeah, perhaps you'd like to hear another, like, he's sick of playing the same goddamn song for.
Well, his hand hurts.
I
He like
know.
does that motion.
um Yeah, just I was because I was pretty excited for this episode after episode 2. I was kinda like, "I'm getting the show." I mean, a
Yeah.
lot of the issues I had, I don't mind the time jumps. I think they're
No.
pulling it off, and I think it's giving the show momentum as it goes
Yeah,
because 'cause
well,
we're
because
going with these big story
how are we gonna sit there
things.
the whole time and like I don't know, is the new queen pregnant? Is the new how long was that gonna go on?
Well, it's just Game of Thrones did something similar to this, and it really hurt Game of
Yeah,
Thrones,
I
and
know.
but this show, they're just doing it better. They're just jumping at in time being like and at the beginning of every episode, they're like, "Well, it's been 6 months," or they're like, "It's his 2nd year, it's been 2 years." They just let you know at the beginning without putting a font up on the screen.
Yeah.
But that thing too, right? So it becomes this whole conflict between Viserys and, Rhaenyra.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and then this wonderful conversation where they have an argument in front of everybody, and then
He just starts scolding her and then they're like,
and
pretty
there's a
much.
scene where she comes back to the camp and she's got blood in her hair and on her neck, and it's fucking badass.
Yeah,
It's
she looks great
it's
in
one of the
that.
coolest moments of all of Game of
She's got the
Thrones.
walk perfect
Yeah,
too, the actress.
I agree. That moment was great, but then the two of them have a conversation, and he's telling her about duty and what she has to do, and then she calls out his hypocrisy. She's like, "No, if this was about duty, you wouldn't have married who you would have married."
Mhm.
And then he
He says, "Fair."
he literally says like, "You're right. I hear you." Who the fuck writes scenes like that in a show? Nobody. I mean, I used to do that comedically, like where characters would like, you've seen some of my old stuff. I
Yeah.
would do it comedically where people would have an argument and then somebody would say something, the other character would go, "You're right. I'm sorry." Because I would always say nobody does that, and then she says something to him which is completely valid.
Yeah.
She makes a great point, and he goes, "That's true."
No, it's so great to see a king that is receptive to what people have to say to him. He takes in everything that people say to him and really considers.
Well, I would even go beyond that. It's just great to see a character in something
Oh,
that
yeah.
isn't acting off emotion. Like he hears what she says and he says that's true. And then in a moment,
See, I would argue I think he is acting on emotion because he clearly cares so much for his daughter, and he regrets so much of putting her to the side
yeah, but
waiting
it's
for a
like it's
son.
like emotional intelligence though. It's not
Oh,
like
yeah, no, he's not just being, like, reactionary.
because to show that level of empathy to say to her, "Okay, you have to get married, but like me, you can choose who you want." Just to show that. I mean, I thought that was wonderful. I mean, I thought that was like so touching and on point of like
I mean, he's signing his death sentence because, yeah, the realm is not gonna like that in the setting that a father, even if he is the king of the whole
yeah.
realm, says, "Oh, not only is my daughter heir and she's going to be your queen, she gets to marry whoever she wants, even if it is this Dornish guy that she rose to power and,
Well, just
I just see so much
I mean,
drama.
clearly everything bad's gonna happen. I mean, I'm
Oh, I'm waiting for it.
I mean, because we still have 7 episodes.
I
I
know.
mean, I'm so invested now, and I'm like, the feeling's coming back of like,
Yeah.
because I think
You used to shake. You get
I
so
used to shake every week when Game of
so
Thrones would
pumped
start.
up.
Yeah, I as even as it started to fall apart, I still had this hope in my head because I was still like, because yeah, it was hard. It was hard on Sundays. People forget now because you can kind of binge it now, but people forget like watching Game of Thrones back in the day.
Well, that's we're really getting that experience. You're waiting all week, like, oh God, where are they gonna go
Well,
next?
because I think we're gonna be surprised. I think we're thinking like, oh, obvious, Otto Hightower's up to something, and I think they're paying a lot of this. I think a lot of people we like are gonna do bad things, and I think a lot of people that we think negatively about aren't gonna be as bad. Like that night guy, the Dornish guy. I wouldn't be shocked if that dude does something bad. Like I think betrayals are coming. I think the people
Oh
that we
yeah,
think are nice are gonna be the ones that stab our characters in the back, and I think that's the right decision. Is to get us to like these certain people and get sucked in and be like, man, that guy's an asshole.
yeah,
That's what I'm waiting for, because they're pretty much spelling everything out, but my hope is that someone like that night guy turns out to do something bad. That would be perfect, and that's in tune with George Martin's world of, like,
yeah. Well, because they have such a happy love story right now that it can't go well.
yeah, just do whatever you can to, like, and I don't say go for cheap shock value, just give someone motivation, like, Otto turns a switch at some point, and he starts to incentivize people to betray the Targaryens, and they do,
Mm-hmm.
because of power.
Yeah.
And that's and I feel like, man, they're at a point now where if they can pull up the next like 2 or 3 episodes and then start to transition in that period, I mean, we're talking about like this could be hype television. Like the last 2 or 3 episodes could legitimately be like, because this was quality. This was on quality with like earlier Game of Thrones.
Right. Exactly.
This
Yeah.
was like the slower episodes in season 3 and stuff that I really like. My favorite episode is not is Kiss by Fire, which is a all dialogue episode. It's like when
Yeah.
Jamie tells Brienne about why he killed the king, and it's like Rob has to decide if he's gonna cut the guy's head
Yeah,
off
but
for
those
betraying.
episodes, if you're already into the storyline, those are the most captivating. They hold your interest the entire time.
That's what I watched Game of Thrones for. It was never for the spectacle of it, which is what it became. Not that that
Yeah.
wasn't good, because it was, but
Yeah, they got dragons down pat now.
well, just even well, because I guess we'll get into that, but because I think we covered pretty much everything. The big build up to this is the final 15, because this is the first time we really
Yeah.
get an action scene.
And it's good.
It is good. I mean, I have some questions, but
Oh, yeah.
I will say for the most part, I'm glad they waited to do an action scene. I'm glad they didn't do too much because late, like Game of Thrones, got to the point where it's like, here's a 45-minute battle because we know people are gonna say it's like Battle of the Bastards.
Yeah.
This was like 10 minutes,
Yeah.
maybe 10 minutes
Quick.
in and out.
You got what you wanted out of
You
it
just get a little bit, and now hopefully we can go back to dialogue. But it's a ridiculous sequence.
from what I can tell he ended it.
It's a ridiculous sequence. Like, so they're all there having a meeting talking about like basically how Damon's fucking up this war, and the Valyrians are like talking like, hey, let's
Which they give no evidence. Like, what is he doing that's fucking up the
they
war?
they
He's out there riding on his dragon burning shit. Y'all are standing over here
the
just
war makes no sense. This war makes no sense. But I went with it. Whatever.
Yeah, no, it was fun. It's
You can
fine.
forgive stuff when most things are good. That's the thing about it. You don't have to like you can point out issues, little nitpicks, but it's only when the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah,
But like
yeah.
85% of this episode's solid. There's not issues with
Sure.
it. So if there's 15% of it that you're like, I don't know if that makes sense, you can forgive it. I don't care. And Game of Thrones was that way too for a lot of it, but it was mostly good. Then it got to the point where the bad,
Mhm.
where nothing made sense. Like King Viserys and everything, I have no issues with this character. I'm like, everything going on with him and his storyline is okay. Damon's storyline, the plot of it is wonky. So he shows up, and then the king sends help. The king sends a letter that he's going to send
Yeah.
help. He sends
10 ships are on the way.
after 3 years, and then Damon reads
Like
this,
Lannister ships, I'm pretty sure is what he said.
no dialogue. Yeah, no dialogue. And then Damon just beats the shit out of this guy. He's pissed.
Yeah. He took the whole like don't shoot the messenger and he's like, "What? I didn't shoot him. I just beat him with my helmet."
And then I didn't quite I was confused because then they just cut to Damon in a boat by himself, and I was like, "Is he going to commit suicide? What is he
Well,
doing?" Because the timeline didn't make sense to me. They just jumped to it, and he's on a boat by himself, and I goes, "This take
the
place?"
the only connection I can think is because the kid was talking about that same exact plan before the messenger came,
Yes.
where he said, "We need to send someone out as bait," and they're like, "Who? Who would be crazy enough to do this?" And he's like, "Damon." They're
No,
like,
they are setting up the plan. It's just weird that
"But he, like, executed that same plan." I'm like, "Okay, did him and the kid discuss this after he beat the crap
It
out
was
of."
just weird the drama of it because they set up this plan, and then we hear that the king's sending aid after 3 years, and then that's when Damon and them decide like, okay, we're gonna win this war now because what you kind of don't know what's going on. Then you realize Damon's doing this because he doesn't want the victory to be given to his brother.
Yeah.
That's why he's doing this. So he's willing to go on a suicide mission to pull this off because they know the only way this plan's going to work. This is based off the visuals of the show. Is that
Mhm.
they have to convince Mr. Krabs that there's not going to be a dragon, and it's actually pretty well staged. Like, because you see him he keeps looking at the
He
sky,
always looks at.
which I'll take that. I'll take that over what Game of Thrones became where nothing
Yeah.
made sense. It's like you know what's going on. You're like he's sending guys
Well,
out.
he communicates the way that the White Walkers, where it's all where they look, how they,
Yeah.
how they move, all that.
So he's looking up and like, okay, no dragons. Send 10 more guys. Okay, no
Yeah,
dragons.
he sends waves like it's a
Well, I don't think
video
he wanted
game.
everyone to go out at once because I had
They
issue with
use
that.
the caves to hide.
Yeah, but so then Damon, I was like, what's gonna happen here? And then he does the like, oh, I got you, lol.
Yeah,
Sorry.
starts stabbing
So starts
people.
fucking people up.
Yeah, because he went out with a white flag. He's actually a bastard for that.
And so he starts getting berated with arrows. So this was the issue. Like, this was the Jon Snow Battle of the Bastards thing,
Mm.
and this is when I thought, like, okay, maybe he's a Zoran High or whatever, and the Lord of Light's protecting him. As they were talking in this about visions and fire. So the
Yeah,
Lord of the Light is present in this show's
yeah.
cup, which is something that Game of Thrones never bothered to explore. Which was the most interesting thing at the end of it was like, what's going on with the gods? What is this shit? And then they just left all that open.
Yeah, because they make it very much part of it. Like, oh, that's real.
Yeah, no, but no, the Red Priestesses have powers. We
Yes.
see it.
Yeah.
Viserys saw something in the fire.
Danny doesn't burn.
Yeah, it's been throughout. I mean, Jon Snow's able to come back from the dead. Like Bear,
Yeah.
like that's the thing. Characters are brought back from the dead. There's clearly
The
magic.
number one from Game of Thrones, little elf children can bring back
The
people and
children.
turn them into ice monsters.
Yeah, and by the end they did something like that. But so it's kind of cool to hear some of the lore stuff. But um, so Damon basically so sack, but these arrows are just getting shot. And I'm not saying that it's impossible to like avoid it because hitting
Because
a move.
arrows, especially that type of
Yeah,
technology, would not be precise.
well, hitting a moving target, but they're just shooting so many.
There's all angles.
So to me, it's like whenever, because even if he had just had a shield and he was dodging them with the shield, or if he had been run, because later they have the arrows hitting a thing and he's under it, and I thought, okay, well, why didn't you have him do that? Where he just waits.
Or why didn't he do like a stealth mission and hide in one of those?
Well, they could have just done it where he was doing something to avoid the arrows, and I would have been
Yeah,
totally fine with that.
anything.
Instead, he just somehow avoids 100 arrows. But I will say he does get hit, and that does fix that issue in a little way because I was getting real worried. Like, okay, he's gonna run through this battle, not get hit by any arrows, and then he gets hit by like 3 arrows, and you're like, okay, you're at least you gave him a little bit of that stupid shit, but then you brought it back to reality, and then you get this really tense sequence where he's getting surrounded. It's this handheld camera work. It looks like Saving Private Ryan,
Mhm.
and you're
Classic battle scene.
it awesome, awesome. Like I said, whoever directed this episode, I think
Yeah.
did the best job out of the first 3 episodes. Like
Oh,
this
as
is
a whole, fantastic.
because the Miguel Spagavanov or whatever his fucking name is, he did the first episode and he was like a showrunner on this, and they're replacing him for season 2. Um, I thought whoever did this episode, this was by far the classiest episode of the show so far, and I hope this is more of the direction that they're going in visually and kind of how they put it together. But then, yeah, it's a surprise attack. They show up. The dude's riding a dragon,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh fuck
Well, because
yeah,
you don't know until that point that the kid is a dragon rider.
yeah. That's the thing that they kind of keep that hidden.
You
You
just
don't even know who he is.
Yeah,
You don't
you
even.
just see that he's like obviously that Valerian
But you
family.
go with it. It's weird. The show's getting away with a lot by just being good adequate for a lot of it. The fact that it's not being that stupid, I'm like, okay, I'm okay with not really knowing this character. It 'cause then that does make it surprising.
Yeah.
It does make it a surprise that he shows up
Well,
riding the
immediate
dragon.
character building, you're like, "Oh, okay, he's important."
So then Damon follows Crab King into the cave, and I thought they were gonna have a fight, but then he comes out, and the
It's
motherfuckers
my
cut.
favorite scene.
No, that is funny.
He
He's just
cut
drag.
him not even in half, he, like, sliced him diagonal.
Yeah, it's
He
very
has
specific.
the one arm, and he's dragging his torso with guts dangling out, and, like, I wanna know this guy's backstory. What happened to this crab guy? Because he is covered in burns or grayscale or something.
Yeah, they said he was really a sweetheart beforehand. He was a very nice
I
guy.
mean, man, can you imagine how people treat him in society? I'm sure it's hard.
He was
A
funny.
prince.
He had a great sense of humor. Everything just went real downhill.
He didn't even know about crabs.
Well, because it seems like he seemed intelligent. I don't know who was acting, but the way the actor would act through the kind of the makeup is
Well,
very Lord of the Rings, Leatherface kind
yes.
of stuff, like where you're getting a lot of personality through this like fucked up makeup. But I just don't know if I buy that he would have sent all of his men out there and fell for that attack. He did seem because if he's able to drag this war out for 3 years, it seems like a I don't know. I think the combat strategy they definitely didn't think any of that stuff out. Like this, like the battle between these two doesn't really make a lot of sense to me that it even
No.
lasts this long. And then all of a sudden now the dude's like, okay, we're just gonna let ourselves get defeated this way and go. Like, why do you need to send every guy out to fight Damon by himself? That doesn't even make any sense. Why are you sending out all your soldiers? Just stay in the caves.
Why doesn't he have like one token, like really big guy that just goes out on those sort of missions?
I agree, and it could have been like a fight between him and Damon. Just to,
Well, he
'cause
didn't have a hound or anything.
Well, the way I would have written this, because I get they wanted it to be this big action scene because they needed one, and it's
Yeah.
actually really impressive that Damon has no dialogue during this whole stretch, and you get a lot of his character, which says a lot about Matt Smith.
Oh, his facial acting through all of it.
Uh,
He comes off so psycho. It's like, "Oh, war has broken you."
but I would have written it that yeah, he goes there, and then Crab Guy sends out like one or two dudes, and then Damon fights them, and then they kind of watch it as like a demonstration. They're not shooting
Yeah.
arrows; it's just like a watch, and then kind of go from there as opposed to what they did. I just think there's like 10 minutes of thinking about it. You could have, but they wanted that dramatic moment of him like taking out a bunch of dudes, the arrows coming at
Well, I
him.
think they really did wanna showcase, "Hey, look, this new character has a dragon. He's coming in to save the day."
Yeah. But having said that though, like I have issues with some of the stuff logistically or like logically. I don't even know if it all makes sense this war, because like it's just sorry they have fucking dragons. Like okay,
2, there's 2 there.
you go hide in a cave. Like who gives a shit?
Can't they blast fire
I don't
into the
know.
cave?
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense to because that's the thing. How would he replenish
Well,
his army if
yeah, I
every
guess you
time
don't
they go out they would get burned to death every time?
yeah. Well, unless they have a cave system set up. I mean, I'm really thinking, like, in the Lord of the Rings
But does
realm,
he have 100 million soldiers?
they don't really discuss the
Because you
numbers
got
of
to think about it, if you're
soldiers.
getting in a battle, right, and a dragon can come down and burn 10,000 people,
Yeah,
how do you win?
yeah.
I mean, the problem is we've seen this. We saw Game of Thrones. You can't beat
Well,
the and they're not using those stupid
and
scorpion things that shoot at the
when
dragons that
you're
they
bringing
had.
up
So what do you
you're
do?
you're bringing up too, like, Daemon's dragon is more mature than any other dragon we've seen. It's bigger, it should be stronger. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely holes like that with it.
Yeah, those are just little things where it's like just you know it's probably producing time, money, because the budget. They're like, okay, we got to spend this amount of money on the CGI and what we have per episode. Because Game of Thrones had this issue throughout the whole run too. A lot of the battle scenes and things in Game of Thrones don't make sense, but you cared about the character so much. Usually, that kind of overcame it a lot. Like people can praise Battle of the Bastards all they want, but so much of it doesn't make sense. Like Jon Snow just acts like an idiot.
Yeah.
There's just so many things that like, okay, why would any of you do this? So it's in line with the show, but still, having said that, it's a cool action scene. It looks great. it makes Damon a badass.
Oh, yeah.
Like it because you're lacking Damon in this episode, so then they give him this huge fucking scene at the end that kind of brings you back around. And then we saw the preview of the next episode. He's like back like with them with the
Oh, well,
Targaryens.
I mean, he chopped the dude in half. I said he pretty much put an end to that
He's
section
got
of
his
the
hair cut
lore.
short or something now. Because I don't.
The next episode looks interesting.
But I don't know. I don't know if I'm missing anything. Well, the thing where she didn't kill the stag,
Yes, she sees
that
not
was interesting.
the white stag's not part of the hunt, and they're disappointed because that's what they said. They're like, it's a magnificent beast, but it's not white because they were looking for the white
Yes,
stag, and the white stag found her
and she didn't do anything.
peaceful.
It was very. It took me like Princess Mononoke or something like that. It
No,
was
she's a Disney princess. I've been
yeah,
saying
you
it.
said it. Well, it's even Harry Potter with the fuck what are they called? The enchantments or what when you because
Oh,
it's
the ones that he sees after you've witnessed death. Is that what you're talking
no,
about?
you get your thing. He has the deer,
Oh, the
the
Patronus.
patron. It
Yes,
just when he sees it had that kind of like it was this
it's her
magical
spirit animal.
yeah, this moment of
Mm-hmm.
elegance of just like
Well, it was the moment because the whole discussion she had been having with I can't remember the Dornish guy. I don't remember his name, but what she had been discussing with him is that she was doubting herself because she's always been pretty self assured. Like everyone should listen to me, and this is the first we've seen her waver on that. And their whole discussion was him saying, "No, you are worthy, and the kingdom will follow you," because that's her fear is they won't accept her. But this is where it really sinks in. She saw that stag, and that's when she went back and like badass mode activated.
yeah, she saw something and it affected her mood about something and then she made a decision forward. It's like the show's doing those things. Um so I can be happier. I don't remember the showrunner's name. I know George R. R. Martin worked on it, and then the one guy did, but its name's Ryan, something like that. The guy is like showrunner. He's done a very good job. This is a very well cast show.
Yes.
It's been so far pretty well made.
I want
But
to see them do more with Damon because his that actor is
yeah, no,
fantastic.
Damon has been the charisma, but once again, the guy playing King Viserys, I think, is giving like the much more difficult performance in a lot of
Yes.
ways.
Yes.
Um, and I think he's doing a lot with it that maybe isn't on there on the page in every scene. Um, but yeah, I mean, the first episodes I was like, these are okay. These are so, and they had highlight moments. Like the first episode had some real highlight moments where it was like, wow, I wasn't expecting some of this stuff, like the baby getting cut out and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Like
they jumped into that.
some of that stuff was legitimately like really exciting, and it felt big. And then other things were like, eh. And then episode two, I mostly liked because there was more talking and it did slow down a bit, but it was kind of odd with like, okay, why are we here now and why are we here now?
Well, and even just their like round table discussion. That whole scene was very
Yes, why is yeah.
weird.
But this episode, this was focused. I thought it was very smart. I liked introducing Jason Lannister and like these
Yeah.
other
Well, the
characters.
twins, we get the
The
two of
twins,
them.
the twin Lannisters and him talking about and that should be like fan servicey crap, but I didn't mind it at all. I'm fine hearing about this stuff. Like hopefully we meet a Stark soon. I'm okay with that stuff. I really
Yeah,
am.
Starks would be cool to see, but
Um
I don't know if they'll come
well
down.
this is a good version of a prequel right now.
Yeah.
This is like what Star Wars wasn't or like The Hobbit or Fantastic Beasts. Um this is like a good version of like okay we're gonna go ahead in years and so far they haven't killed they can't kill the mythology because it's already dead.
That's the thing. They've kept a lot of the lore stuff, and it's still very in line with the Game of Thrones stuff, but they're also doing their own storyline with it. And I mean, I guess, okay, I'm not that well researched on the actual lore of the Valerian and all that, but I mean, it just seems like they're being a little more original. Not, I mean, a lot of other prequels just
Well,
take way too much.
I read critics reading about I mean because this got like a 68 on Metacritic and stuff and like Rings of Power came out and everyone's
Hmm.
shitting on it but critics gave it like a 71 even though universally everyone's like this is awful and I've
Yeah.
seen clips from Rings of Power where it's like this is the worst shit ever. And I was reading reviews about the show because fans are loving it. But I was reading some of the critics, and they were saying, "Oh, as it goes on, it becomes too beholden to Game of Thrones, or it's too similar and all that." I gotta
Huh.
say, the critics. I mean, because
Are they saying from, like, the current episodes that are out? Or are
they
they
saw
saying
they saw the first four, and I kept reading a lot of them.
maybe 4 is a big
And
drop
don't get
off?
me wrong, it got mostly good reviews, but there was a lot of critics kind of acting like it was too familiar to Game of Thrones and all that stuff. And I get that with like the music at the beginning,
Oh, well, yeah.
like that is from,
They directly took that, yeah.
but I really don't think it's fair. I think this episode, I'm not thinking about Game of Thrones as much anymore. I'm thinking about these characters in this show and
Well,
these actors, and I'm interested in what's going on now. To where if I hadn't even seen Game of Thrones, I think I
yeah.
would still be enjoying this on its own. I might be enjoying it more because I'd be like, "What is all this stuff?"
Well, and
I'm
it's
bringing in a lot of bias,
I don't get how it's that reminiscent because, okay, your main female lead, she is nothing like Danny. Other than being a little bit of a spitfire, but she's totally unique. The king is nothing like any of the kings other than maybe a little bit of reminiscence of, like, Ned Stark, but he's nothing like any of the other
but Ned Stark wasn't a
kings.
king.
That's true.
Like he was because there was no king of the North at the time.
Yeah.
You were the
Oh,
warden of the
yeah.
North. Robb Stark became the king of the North. I, I don't know. It's a different show. Like I don't think it's at the level of like Game of Thrones was in those first seasons. Like don't get me wrong, because like it
Oh,
doesn't
yeah,
it well, it doesn't have Tyrion and Bronn. I mean, we were talking about this with our
the
friend.
comedy's
We were
lacking.
talking about this with our friend because he had just rewatched the first season, and we were like, "What other show introduces so many iconic characters in the first like six episodes? Like by episode six of Game of Thrones,
It's
there's
overwhelming.
Robert, Tyrion, Braun, Jamie, Cersei, Catelyn Stark, Arya, Pharrell, the guy who's training her with the sword dancing.
Yeah.
He's an amazing character that you remember. Littlefinger, there. I mean, in the first five, six episodes of Game of Thrones, they've introduced like 15 iconic characters, and you're following on. This isn't even counting Danny and Jorah and Khal Drogo. Some characters that are only in that first season. Ned
Jaq
Stark,
and Hagar.
well, he's season two.
That's what I was saying, he's not introduced yet.
But the first season, I mean, I don't. I mean, it's crazy. Like I can't think of anything to compare it to. Where like the first few episodes, there's that many great characters being played that well, and a balance of things. And this show certainly doesn't have that. There's not like a dozen great characters on the show right now. In fact, I'd say there's probably only about three, really,
Yeah, it's just the
and
family.
everyone else is just kind of good, okay. Um, but just eliminating that, the comparison. Um, I was surprised how good Stranger Things 4 was because I kind of given up on it after season 2 and 3, and I thought season 4 they really came back in a lot of ways, especially with adding a villain. Um,
Yeah, interesting villain.
it just kind of revitalized the show. But I will say right now, out of everything I've seen currently, if they can keep this up, this is definitely like my favorite show of the year right now. I'm scared to like fall in love with it because I'm scared like of just what could happen.
Heartbreak.
Well, I think, but the thing is, D&D aren't working on this, you know. But
Yeah.
um, but I was just, man. I mean, I'm just liking it more and more every week. Every week, I'm liking the show more, and I'm excited about the next episode, and I
Well,
think about
and
it.
this is the first episode because I mean, I know we weren't the second rewatch, we weren't really, like, paying that much attention, but it was pleasant enough to have on the background, and then those, like, major scenes come up and you pay
This was
attention.
the first episode I thought was really a rewatchable one. The
Yes.
first two I didn't want to rewatch again. When we talked about rewatch this one, it's like I would watch this again. This is just a solid episode of television.
Yeah.
Like eliminate the first two episodes and everything. Just take this episode on its own. This is just a solid.
Yeah, there's a lot of feeling that comes from it.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't say I'm a fan now. It's I try to be fair and point out things that I think are problems.
Oh, there's no, like, rose-colored glasses with it. It is what it is, but it was enjoyable.
Well, even on that, enjoyable makes it sound subjective. I'll say I think it's good.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it's good.
I think it's good. Like I think they're at a point now. Like I mean, I'm assuming George Martin wrote on some of this because it's
Right.
pretty good and it's got some of that George Martin stuff to it. And
Well, how else are they gonna get the lore and stuff, like, as close.
this is what I always complain about with Game of Thrones that he wasn't involved after season four, and then we don't know
Yeah,
what was going on with with DB Wise and them, and I don't know. As far as I know, he's way more involved with this.
good.
And it shows. It's got the flaws of George Martin, but it's also got the positives of George Martin, where it's like
Yeah.
It's got some of the issues with some of his writing, but at the same time, the episodes aren't stupid. So far, they haven't done anything stupid or something that's made me cringe.
The cringe is what so many, especially prequels and stuff, are so
Yeah,
subject to cringe. If they can avoid that, which they have done,
yeah.
oh man,
Well,
I'm sold.
everything's just cool. I
Yeah,
don't leave the episode thinking cringy stuff. I'm like, that's cool. And things that I didn't think was cool became cool or
yeah,
like just become better. And then I'm like, all right, this is just cool. Like I like the look of the show. I like the vibe. It's a different vibe
I'm
from
ready to
Game of
go with
Thrones.
it.
I know I am too. I'm just sitting there thinking like, fuck, there's still 7 weeks, and I'm like to me, this was like an 8 out of 10 episode. So I'm just sitting there thinking like, oh my god, if they can do better than this down the road, or we can get to a point like I don't know, man. It might be like I thought the hype was dead, but it's like Game of Thrones might be back because I see too like 10 million people are like it's a hit.
Yeah.
I'm like Game of Thrones might be back. I thought it was over, but I don't think it is.
Well,
I
and
think they
more
bounced it.
episodes like this, because, I went in and I was talking about it at work, because, yeah, one of my coworkers was talking about the Rings of Power, and I was like, no, man, you got to get on this House of Dragon, man.
Yeah, fuck Jeffrey Bezos. Seriously. Like, no, fuck them. Like, people can say what they want about these other, like, streaming services or the bullshit with Amazon or with Netflix or all this stuff or Disney Plus. HBO, man, they've consistently been HBO now for because they got into this a lot earlier than everyone else.
Yeah.
They've been doing this since the 90s, since Sopranos and Oz. Um, and I don't know who the guys are at HBO, but, like, they still have that thing. It's still got this just feels like a higher quality production than all the stuff that's on all the other places.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It just has that level of class to it that HBO brings. They even do the teen show Euphoria, and you look at it and it looks like gorgeous. Like the cinematography is like amazing. It's like,
Oh, there's a reason it became, like, the biggest Zoomer show.
yeah, HBO. Just every time you think like these things are done, HBO somehow still. And I've always been a fan of it, and I've always paid. And HBO is expensive, and I've always had it. And I've never felt ashamed of it because every few years they find a way to like,
It's worthwhile, you know?
yeah, like this is far and ahead better than like any blockbuster or any other franchise IP show that's on right now on any streaming service.
Oh, there's a lot in its corner, that's for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I like House of the Dragon episode 3, second of his name. I'd say best episode so far.
Without a doubt.
And I would say that right now I am really excited to see Viserys and Daemon together again and to see where that relationship's going to go and where things are going in the future. And I really don't know where it's like I have theories, but I 100% don't know where it's going because it could literally
It
go
could go,
anywhere.
yeah, like you said,
It could go
people
anywhere.
could start turning. You
Yeah.
never know.
Especially
Like,
with the time jumps, people change.
yeah.
We don't know. Like I didn't expect the girl's friend to be her mother 2 episodes later.
Mommy dearest. Yeah.
Yeah, and this weird fucked up mother daughter relationship. I mean, it's classic George Martin stuff. It's like a porn scenario
Yeah, very
almost, but he's
much.
like playing it like if it was serious, but it's this ridiculous soap opera kind of scenario where it's like your best friend's now your mother, and you have to still hang out with her and deal with that stuff. But
Daddy, what are you doing?
yeah, it is like that. It does have that.
Didn't want to go there, but I couldn't
I
help
mean,
it.
Game of Thrones first episode is a brother and sister fucking. That's what
Yeah,
kicks
but
off the entire
but look at
war.
them.
Oh yeah, I mean, who else were they gonna? I think they just looked at each other and was like, "No one's better looking than us, so we might
Yeah,
as well have
they're
sex."
like, listen, this is a given.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It could just be fanboyism. I don't know. It could just be
No, because I'm not that much of a fan, and I still enjoyed it.
yeah, I mean, I just hate to say it. I think this was really good.
Yeah,
It was really good. This episode in particular, this was the one that sold me. I was like,
it's just scary to say that, but
it
yes,
is.
this episode at episode 3, it's good.
Yeah, it's good. We'll see what happens
Yeah,
after episode 3. But I have faith in these people. I don't think they've shown any sign. There might be 1 or 2 episodes a season that are kind of weak
sure.
because that's just the nature of it. But if the majority of them are like solid, then I'm like, fuck it. This is an achievement. Like this didn't have to be great. It just had to be good or make you kind of get over
Yeah,
a Game of Thrones
the
finale.
bar's pretty low at this point.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I would highly recommend it if you haven't started watching it. And I might watch Rings of Power at some point to talk about it, but to be honest, I don't know if I can bear it. It's just everything I've seen looks fucking terrible. But
Just do a commentary while we watch.
yeah, maybe when it's all over,
Yeah.
watch it instead of watching it weekly. But we're gonna try to start doing these on Sundays now, so they're upload on Monday, not doing these in the middle of the week. We're gonna try to talk, and maybe even to the point where
Trying. Life
maybe
is
even to the point there'll be kind of a live stream the last couple episodes of the show where we just do a live thing after it's over. Especially maybe the finale. I think we should do that with.
that would be fun.
Um, but yeah, just tune in next week and we'll be talking about episode 4.
Yep.
Um,
Fingers crossed.
yeah.